Welcome, Darklings, to Season 3 of the Reign of Blood podcast. I'm Ember, one of your hosts, here to introduce you to the shadowy depths of what hopes to be our most sinister season yet. This season, your unholy trinity of organizers and hosts, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and myself, have entirely way too much fun with the Summer of Stabs, our 80s horror-themed series that promises to be both educational and thrilling. Our aim is to explore the macabre beauty that lies in the shadowed, or maybe not so shadowed, spaces of desire. Leading up to Reign of Blood Nightfall, our advanced Halloween extravaganza, we'll be discussing topics such as embodied and informed consent, risk mitigation, and other helpful tips, ensuring that every prick, slice, and puncture is as thought through as it is sensational for you. We'll also continue interviewing sharps enthusiasts from around the world to find out what makes the blood-loving heart tick. And maybe we'll talk Miss K into recording some more horror meditations for us. Join us as we explore the eerie, the edgy, and the exquisitely sharp. This is Reign of Blood, where the macabre meets the magnificent, and the only limit is your imagination, risk profile, and informed consent. Let the Summer of Stabs begin. But first, a content warning. This podcast is not suited for individuals who are not legal adults, are not interested in heavier BDSM practices, who are presently having severe mental or relationship health concerns, or who do not already understand basic BDSM practices regarding consent, ethics, risk mitigation, etc. Topics may include things like mental health issues, social issues, injustice, blood and sharks, of course, medical trauma, medical issues, trauma of various types, and more. Listener discretion is heavily advised. So I've got a unique guest for you here today, listeners. With me today is BrutalMaster and EmilyAddams. So this is a unique chance to be able to get some different perspectives with sharps and blood play. So welcome to the podcast, guys. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourselves a little.
BrutalMaster, my website is brutalmaster.com. We are celebrating 25 years online. I guess we're probably one of the oldest continuously operating sort of realistic S&M. You know, we videotape and photograph the things that we do here with an eye towards keeping it, you know, we don't do a lot of things we don't do anything that's not real. What you see is what's actually happening. There's real pain, real torture, and often real blood. So we've been doing it for a long time, and you know, we're going to keep doing it for a while as well. And EmilyAddams is just happened to be here in hell, which is what we call when we do shoots here. And I'll let her introduce herself.
Well, obviously, my name is EmilyAddams. I'm 21 years old, and I've started fetish and BDSM modeling 2 years ago, kind of as a full-time job. So I'm doing that right now, and I usually model for bondage productions, for anything that's like tape related and stuff like that. And I usually don't do what I do here, which is hardcore play on camera, because I personally can't spread it on the internet, and that's why I kind of come here to enjoy myself and to like just delve all the blood stuff a little bit deeper, because I feel like I scare other people away if I
Yeah.
if I do that too open. So yeah. What else? Oh, I do have an online presence. I'm on Loyal Fans. It's EmilyAddams Official. If anyone has any questions that we're not going to answer here, I'm happy to answer them there. Yeah, but that's it so far from me, I guess.
Adams has 2 Ds, by the way.
Adams has 2 Ds. Lovely.
And
so
you can't see she's also wearing shackles, and we shaved her head yesterday. And we had a pretty extreme blood torture shoot today. So
yeah,
this is quite present.
You were telling me a little bit about nailing. I believe we were doing tongue nailing.
Yep, we've been doing that.
Oh, you want to tell me a little bit about that and how that went?
Yeah, so we did some research at first because we had this idea of having my tongue nailed.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to have I have a septum piercing, and he kind of also wanted to have the nail going through the septum. So we did some online research to see if we could find anything related, and if we could find like someone who has some sort of expertise, like some sort of an idea or had done that before. And we actually found a video, and I've
Mm-hmm.
had a tongue piercing on a specific place on my tongue before. So I knew that spot was like safe to pierce through. So
Mm-hmm.
we picked that exact same spot, even though it has had healed together since I think I had my tongue pierced like 3 years ago. So that's all blended together anymore. It's not a hole. It's more
Mm-hmm.
like scar tissue. And then yeah, we took a nipple clamp, we placed it on the tip of my tongue, we pulled my tongue out, and then we just went straight through, I think with like 2 hits.
I think I went through with one, but then I gave a second hit just to set it.
Ah, yeah, I felt that
Mm.
as well.
It was a stunning visual. And then I used that to keep her in place so I could shave her head.
Yeah.
Ah.
And then we, on top of that, I brought a baseball bat that I had seen in the last Joker movie, I believe.
Yes, it's also in it's the same, similar to the one in
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, yeah, with the barbed wire on it.
Yeah, it's a mix
Mhm.
of both. So I just put a lot of barbed wire on it, and then we eventually have had him smack that on my ass a few times while I was still nailed with my tongue, which was intense because I didn't expect the impact on my body. So I kind of had to hold my tongue in place.
Yes. Lovely predicament there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of blood from that too. It's
Mhm.
interesting that the barbed wire bat is a particularly favorite tool for a lot of masochists, I've found.
Yeah, but I get it because you have the hard impact and you
Yeah.
have the big force of a baseball bat.
Yeah, yeah,
You have the blood and kind of the scratchiness from the barbed wire.
yeah,
And you kind of it draws a lot of blood as well because you
just-
hit the barbed wire in.
yeah. It really does. Then you start bleeding right away, and it also snags a little bit. So when you're pulling it back, sometimes I could feel it, like some of the barbs would stick in and they'd snag out, and you have to pull them, sort of pull the. When you're pulling it back, you could feel that snag release.
No,
I love it.
I feel like it's satisfying for kind of both ends.
Yeah.
Because the masochist gets a lot of different sensations, a lot of intense sensations at the same time, while the sadist gets to hold something that actually feels like it's giving a lot of impact as well.
It's absolutely satisfying.
Beautifully fantastic. And there are many folks in our audience who would very much agree with you. We have a lot of barbed wire and barbed wire bat enthusiasts running around.
Yeah, I had a slave that used to come here, well, a masochist. She was essentially a slave, and we used to do some of the barbed wire like all the time, and we did wraps and made crowns of barbed wire and things like that. I do actually find it to be somewhat difficult to work with.
Oh yes.
We bought a huge like roll of it, like it's on a big spool. And I mean, I don't think we've used 5% of the amount that we had. The problem was we bought a particularly heavy duty version of barbed wire that's extremely tough to work with. I mean, you use bolt cutters to cut it. It's always springing around stuff. I think I put it in a corner someplace in the barn and just said, I'll buy something easier to work with when I'm going to use barbed wire in the future.
Smart. So what brought you both kind of into working with Sharps and Blood? So I know we're probably going to get some vastly different stories here.
I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think I actually started out thinking about it as Sharps and Blood and things like that. I mean, I've always been like this. I've never had there was never an epiphany for me like, oh my gosh, I like torturing girls, It was just my sexuality. I realized it had to be channeled properly, and obviously consent is stunningly important. I had played around with nailing a long time ago, before this was even, before the internet, let's put it like that. Long ago, I had nailed a slave's tits to the floor. I just pulled a couple nails out. They weren't very big. They were probably brads would be a good way of putting it. And popped them in. She didn't even really bleed much, but it was very, very erotic. And I left her there for quite some time. And there was a lot of things that happened while she was in that position. So I wrote about that on years later on some internet relay channel called, I think it was called Alt Torture or something. And it caused a great deal of controversy. People just didn't believe it was real. So eventually I had someone came to me who had read that story and wanted to be nailed and skewered and things, and brought me the nails. We took video of it, and I didn't even have a website then, just put it online. So I think the first videos of that happening were actually mine. And so I kind of became equated with that, even though it wasn't so much a specific focus as just part of a broader sense of how I did my art. It's just I'm always interested in creating images that are very dynamic and evocative. So you nail somebody, you know, that's pretty evocative. I've done it. I had a slave twisted years ago. We went out into a wooded area and found a tree that had fallen down, and I nailed her like all up and down her body to the tree, and then caned her and did some other things to her. So yeah, I guess, you know, someplace along the line, I guess the answer to your question is that it wasn't the act of nailing or skewering or blood that particularly drew me. It was the fact that those images are always, you know, dynamic and can be quite, you know, some of them become almost iconic because it's not something a lot of people actually would photograph or attempt to create.
So it was very artistic for you and very much part of creating a...
All of this is about that. All this is about creation. And I mean, I try to, I say this to people that I view this as an art. This is what this is just one of many other kinds of art that I've been involved in my life. But this is sort of one that, you know, I think art needs to be something that creates some kind of emotion, you know, like it should have some impact on us, and for many people this does. And I'm not trying to aggrandize this. Obviously, it's adult material, and you know, for many people this is just something to get off on. But that in itself is kind of interesting, you know. I mean, that's kind of how I got here. I don't want to monopolize this, because I know Emily has a probably very different perspective on this kind of thing.
I kind of didn't nail someone on the floor 25 years ago. Even though your story is pretty cool, because it's like, so when I started to develop an interest on anything that's that was considered violence, because I've never had, when I was like younger and I started to pick up on things that I would find interesting, they would be things that other people would technically consider violence. So someone getting beaten up in a movie, or someone's ass getting kicked, or things like that would raise my interest, but I would always judge myself for and for finding them appealing, because I was pretty much aware of that, of the situation that I'm watching is probably not something someone had consented to or wanted to have done on them. So I thought I was weird for a very long time, and I was interested in knives since ever. So like, I think my first knife, and I even got a tattoo of it, I got it when I was like 4 years old, and I remember playing around with the sharp part already. I remember trying to see how sharp it would be, and if it eventually would even slice my skin, not because I wanted to feel the pain, mainly because I was actually curious, but thrilled probably. And my dad at that time was pretty clever, so he took the spike and the sharpness of that knife, gave it back to me. I bursted out crying because it was it kind of made the whole thing useless for me. And then it took me some years from then on until I started to pick up on that again. And when I had my very first boyfriend, I remember making out with him, and we got a little bit too excited, and we started pushing each other around, and he would push me against the wall, but harder than he intended to. and I would grab him and just grab him and like hold him and just really try to not let him loose. And we would start biting each other, and I would eventually encourage him to bite me harder, because he, as well as the following boyfriends after, by the way, because I was pretty young, he didn't want to hurt me, and he didn't want to do something that would be above any limits. So I was pretty encouraging, and hey, come on, do it harder. And I was meanwhile also getting pretty curious about how far I could go and how much pain I would eventually be able to take.
You're still like that, by the way.
Yeah, I
Nothing-
think so.
Nothing's changed at all.
So I think that's that interest in like being impacted, and just the curiosity of how bad can it be, how sharp can it get, how intense can something get, is brought me there.
So the very much experiential for you, it sounds very much both challenge. It sounds very challenged, very curious minded, and almost ordeal oriented, like accomplishing
Ordeal is a
an
good way of
ordeal.
putting it. She definitely likes ordeals.
Okay. Rebirth almost. I can see that with the shaving and nailing and things. That seems very ordeal oriented.
We were shooting some video today, and after we wrapped up, she had brought this. I mean, it was really, I don't even know what the hell to call this thing. It was sort of an asymmetrical paddle that on one side had like a saw blade sort of looped around, kind of like those curry comb type blades. And the other side, this is in like a heavy lacquer, and the other side were, I actually sort of cut myself on one of the spikes. I think that's what that. Anyway, I cut myself on one of the spikes. I went, holy, this thing is really, really sharp. And there was less sharp studs around it, and so I'd already punished her tits with a like a type of bat that I have, and then she had said, I don't know, try this thing, and she'd said this to me earlier, like she was curious about it. Obviously, she didn't get a chance to, when we're doing this, make those kind of requests. So we finished the whole thing, and the cameras are off and recording stopped, and she said, "Oh, could you use this like a ping pong paddle, and like as if you were bouncing a ping pong ball on the bottom of my tits?" And so I'm like, sure. I mean, you need to realize that her tits were like kind of bloody messes at this point. I mean, they were really like,
no, they were all bloody already. Like
they looked like like hamburger that hadn't been cleaned up. It was so it was just fun.
But it's the curiosity. It's like when he grabbed that pedal first. I think it's from Fun Foxy Toys.
Is that? Oh, I think you made that.
Little Fox Toy Box.
Say it again?
Yeah, Little Fox
Toy Box. Yeah.
From the blood rag. That one.
Yep.
The one with the that one.
Yep. The bloodsheddy.
Little plug for those guys, man. That thing, I will tell you, I've used pretty much everything you can think of and that's a serious piece of equipment.
Oh yeah, their bloodsheddies are fantastic. They're one of our vendors for Reign of Blood.
Yeah.
I met them when I was at Dark Odyssey. I was presenting at Dark Odyssey Fusion this year, and got to meet them there, and then again at Tez Fest. So I've gotten to see them. I haven't made the leap to purchase one yet, because
you should highly
I'm going to eventually. But yeah, no, my husband wants a war club, one of their really big ones, the like big ass $400 war clubs before. So, but yes, no, I love their bloodsheddies. They're fantastic. Little Fox Toy Box does fantastic work. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
anyways,
definitely a piece of art.
Yeah.
This thing.
No, I don't know. I when I first saw it, I fell in love with it, and I immediately thought of you, and I thought I could probably bring it.
Yeah, wow. You come to the right place.
No, but it's that kind of curiosity that made me ask, hey, can we just try to use that as a ping pong bite kind of style? Because, and that's probably kind of connecting to what I said earlier. And a lot of things are because you've never done them or you've never seen them with someone else. I just ask myself constantly, how would that feel? How would that feel?
Yeah.
I regret it 3 seconds later, but until then.
Hey, you know, that's the point. It's just, you ask, then you regret it, but you like the fact that you regret it.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of. I am very familiar with that. Sadomasochist. Oh well. You know, you love the fact that you hate it, and then
And then
you
you
have
hate-
great empathy. You have great empathy, and then I know exactly how that feels.
Yes.
Makes it perfect. Makes it very perfect. A deal as good as I get. No, so you were telling me some interesting stories, Brutal, about how things really got started for you online, and in some of the earlier days of broadcasting some of this in a
Yeah. It was,
more
I mean,
public sphere. Do you
things
mind
have
talking a little more about that?
things have changed a lot in the last 25 years that we've been doing this. I mean, all kinds of, I mean, there's a lot more, I think there's a lot more material out there. Obviously, there's just a massive amount of folks that are doing some kind of adult work now. I think in the early days, I mean, there were some, there were very relatively few websites that were actually kind of decent enough to look at.
Mhm.
I think insects probably comes to mind for most people. I know that when I first saw insects, I was just sort of blown away. I couldn't quite figure out how they managed to be that good and that professional at something that was still so very new,
Mhm.
And then I kind of, it was sort of accidental for me. I never really set out to do an adult website of this nature. I think I mentioned I did this woman had got in touch with me. She came to visit. She brought skewers. We shot video of the skewers, of me skewering her tits. Later, we did a nailing, and I had people knew we were getting together, and she had quite a reputation for being very masochistic. And I had written a lot of things at that point about stuff I'd done in the past. I think some people thought it was made up, and I was just spinning a yarn or spinning a tale. I'm really not a very good fiction writer, so that for me, if I wrote about it, it was real. When that happened, people kind of said, wow, this is going to be interesting with these two together. So I tried to upload the photographs. I mean, in the video, you have to understand, in those days, it was literally had to scan Polaroid photographs. I think it took like 7 or 8 minutes to scan a picture, with the scanner. It was pretty horrible. And then you put them on. I tried to put them on these file sharing internet relay chat channels, and 1 in 3 would actually make it. And then people went kind of nuts and said, oh my God, I got the first one, I didn't get 3 more, and then I got the number 6, and can you re-upload can you re-upload? And at that point, I said, well, I should just maybe put a website up and do this. I didn't really completely think that through. So somebody came to me and said, people said, you need to not have this stuff just floating around out there because kids could get into it. So there was a program you could sign up with where they verify with a credit card and they pay a little something and you get a little piece of the action. And somebody got in touch with me and said, you should really just make this a pay site. That was actually the big thing. That happened all very quickly. And I did it, not truly thinking, oh, this is something I'm going to do for 25 years. But it did become kind of a labor of love. And it gave me the opportunity to meet, and I emphasize this mostly, that it gave me the opportunity to meet just some spectacular women who are stunningly brave and stunningly capable. I mean, hopping on an airplane or a bus or in your car and traveling to see me, knowing full well what's going to happen, takes a certain amount of strength, a great deal of strength and bravery. And that's really what I like to say all the time, is that the real art and passion of my website is the women that have come here for the last 25 years.
It's fantastic. I have not been on your website very much, very often. I'm not much of a porn consumer myself, but I have gotten little snippets here and there. And what I have seen of your work seems very passionate and very individual. You can certainly tell that you put a lot of effort and creativity into what you do, and that there is a high level of respect for the people that you're working with.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's misunderstood because I do a lot of humiliation and degradation along with torture, pain, blood, and I think unfortunately some people misunderstand that, and they, I mean, we'll get people that. So I always post little photographs, things like that. So for example, FetLife, great. Those guys, I think John Baku and his team do a great job. They get a lot of criticism, but it's really sort of an amazing website when you think about it. And you'll have someone who will try to, I think they think they're getting in the spirit of things by calling one of the women who come here, whether they be a model, and most of the people who come are not. They're masochists that just, they want a safe environment to experience what they very much need and feel they deserve on both ways of saying the word deserve. And then you get somebody who comes in and will say, this stupid cow. And I often will try to quietly say to them, you can't say that to somebody you don't know, because that's a consent issue. I can say that because that's part of what we've already talked about. We don't do, I wouldn't say we do huge negotiation here, because honestly.
You wouldn't say you do huge negotiation. We said like 2 evenings and talked about things we do and we don't do. I would call it a huge negotiation.
Let me rephrase that. I do huge negotiations, apparently. To me, it's more, I always think to myself, negotiations like, well, I'll do this if you'll do that, but I don't do that. We have conversations, right, and I gain from the conversation. For someone to come here, by the way, I should say that they have to not just say, I really want to come and see you, but they have to convince me that they really understand what's going on. I mean, this consent has to be very, very obvious, very enthusiastic, kind of multiple times, because for me, that's important, and actually over the years, I think I've gotten even more, I found it to be even more and more important, because it's sort of the basis of everything that we do. So kind of going back to my original point, and Emily's going to say something, I know I can tell by her body language right now. But going back to my original point, you get these people that don't understand that. And that is a concern to me, that people don't get that. The people that come here are coming here for very specific reasons, and they're thinking this through, and it's not a mindless thing on anybody's part.
I think that's mainly because, not mainly, but I think that's also because, and that's something that might just be my perspective, but I feel like for a normie, it might be very hard to understand that a girl, so someone we treat with a lot of high respect in society, and with a lot of, we don't hurt this person in society. I think the mental switch, like the 180-degree switch, might be hard for some people to get, that someone really wants to be hurt, wants to be humiliated, wants to deserve pain, because most people, I think, can't identify with that.
Yeah, or they don't, or they do things that in some way cause them to experience pain, but they do it in a different way. So
it's associated as something negative.
Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, people do extreme sports that it often involves getting hurt, and they often brag about the injuries. If you get an injury like that, you sort of say, yeah, I was riding my BMX bike on a mountain road, and I fell and broke my patella or something, and it's like a badge of honor. And you think, well, that was probably really painful. Yeah, that really sucked, but they actually enjoy that. So I think there's a lot of people that do things. They just often don't get it when it's, I just want someone to bull with me. It's a different kind of the pain is different. So, I shouldn't say the pain is different. The sort of objective of it is different, if that makes sense.
And the social acceptableness and connotations surrounding it. And you're right. You're very much right. It's the Madonna whore dichotomy and ambivalent sexism, where we have both sides of ambivalent sexism coming through, both hostile and the more non-hostile forms of sexism coming in. So yeah, no, I'm right there with you, Emily. But back to what you were saying, Brutal, about people online. I know several people that I've talked to who very much appreciate the care that you show toward making certain that people show the people that you work with respect online,
Yeah.
and in making it clear that these people are being treated in a way that is respectful for them, for the context, because they have negotiated this,
Yeah.
that this is within their desire, within their consent and context here. And in protecting and guarding that, it does not go unnoticed. Let's just
Yeah.
say
I mean, the reality is that I'm more likely to stop a shoot than the person I'm working with. I mean, that's probably happened more often where I've said, yeah, I'm feeling like I'm not getting what I'm seeing is making me concerned. Let's end this, and we can come back later, or maybe not, depending on the.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's important to say too, in 25 years of doing this, I probably made most of the mistakes you could possibly make
Mhm.
in these kind of things. And I always hope I kind of learn from them, And I think there's another element that's important to understand, and we may be running far afield of what you really want to talk about today, and that's that there's a strong emotional content to this, and I
Mhm.
really try to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
That when I'm hurting someone, we know that pain elicits emotions, and even people who have been in non-consensual situations wind up creating a strong emotional bond with someone that's hurting or
Mhm.
I'm aware that happens, and I try to really I try to be mindful of it, and also not exploit that.
Mhm.
I hope I have succeeded. I'm sure I've again made mistakes over the years with that, but tried really hard not to. So that's another aspect that most people never really see or understand.
Mhm. And I think that's beautiful that you consider that part of the potential consequences in what we're doing with edge play and with some of these things. Because, sometimes when we are creating beautiful art that does have these things, it's a little easy to lose sight of some of the consequences.
Exactly.
And yet, have balancing that compassion, balancing those risks and things. It's beautiful to see how you've managed to balance that played out. I do like seeing that. That is a lovely thing.
Let's make this maybe a real life example. So I've always been into knife play, obviously, and I've always been into blood, but I've also always been into punching.
Mhm.
And I've always been looking for some situation that would just give me the impression of getting boxed, like just with
Mhm.
fists. And somewhat in a fight situation, or in a situation where I'm even tied up and not really capable of defending myself. And
Mhm.
I've always had this fantasy. And when this fantasy came very close to I really want/need to experience that level, I was getting almost uncareful with my play partners. I would start to encourage people who didn't have the experience to eventually smack my face a little harder than they were almost confident with. And that's something I realized pretty quick, that that's not something you do, and that's not good for me, that's not good for them. So I stopped, and I did hold that need or that wish to get punched back for a very long time.
Mhm.
When I came here first and we had this talk/negotiation, I mentioned that as something that could be interesting for me, that would be something I would like to experience. And there were like two ways to deal with it. Either you wouldn't have been comfortable with it, and you could have said, okay, this is past my level of comfort, and I very much don't want to do that, and I would have been fine with that, eventually kept that fantasy, eventually moved on. Or the other option, that was then the real life option, and you said, this is something we can think about doing, but I need some knowledge behind that. So instead of just diving full force into it, he actually took boxing lessons and he did some research on where you can punch a human body without causing actual damage. So I could get that whole fantasy fulfilled to the extent of the black eye that I'm carrying today, without having to be concerned about my health and about my life more than I wanted to. And that's something I think that only works with being educated and with very much getting the consent of everyone who's participating.
Yeah. I mean,
And that's also significant investment emotionally. So I'm a psychologist by day. So that's my thing. So I focus I'm a research psychologist. So I'm a scientist. But I research emotions and relationships. The amount of investment right there, when you tell me that you go and you take boxing lessons specifically so that you can invest in keeping someone safe safer while meeting their desires and things with that the amount of both trust and compassion that communicates to someone with it, that's, to me, that in and of itself is very beautiful. Even if it does communicate some violence, and it is black
definitely
eyes.
violent.
Oh yeah, no, it's violent as hell and I love it. It's beautiful. I mean, I was just talking to the individual who is up here visiting me this weekend. I tell people I am not a safe top. If you take a look at me, you take a look at my interests, and you take a look at the shit that I do that is high risk. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was waterboarding someone with their own goddamn blood. And I'm teaching a course on bloodboarding for Rain of Blood Nightfall. That's what we were doing some filming for that one.
You should see the look on her face. I know your viewers can see. You should see the look on her face right now.
Did I just give you ideas? I will be happy to. I will be happy to give you ideas for that. It's like
You might need to make an introduction.
Okay, I can give you an introduction to the technique, but it that's not safe in and of itself. I am an ethical human being. I am an ethical human being. But I have these desires. I have these things that I work through, and I'm willing. My risk profile and my risk budget with it is very large. I'm not even 30 yet. I do a lot of really, really heavy shit, but I do a lot of investment. And one of the big things there that I do to communicate that trust is I invest a shit ton of time and effort to learning and investing in people to help maintain that risk mitigation aspect. So I very much see that, and I think that is such a beautiful thing to do for someone, to invest in that level, both in the relationship and for it communicates a level of importance to someone. That's, I don't know, it's beautiful. It's fantastic.
No,
You're still thinking about bloodboarding.
I'm still thinking about bloodboarding, but also no, but also I agree with you, because when he did that, and when I was aware of how much of research and pre-information someone can do to actually give you a good experience. I'm sorry, that always gets hanged up. My chain just got a bit stuck. Never mind that. Yeah, when someone gives you that much of time and research and kind of like pre-experience, it signalizes a high value to you, kind of. So I've very much felt seen and valued the first time I asked someone to do that for me, while my usual response, or the usual response that I've gotten usually was, what the fuck? No. What do you think? And that's not something you kind of want to hear, even though the desire you express is something that might cause someone to think, okay, what the fuck?
If I could interject here, one thing that I sort of take seriously is because over the years, many people who've come here have brought specific implements to use, or came with very specific ideas and things they wanted to try, often things that were pretty advanced. And I won't do some things I just wouldn't do because I didn't think there's a way to mitigate the danger. I tried to say this earlier, but I'm not the safety police, but there's just, I don't want trips to the ER. I don't want, I certainly don't want trips to the morgue. I don't want anything like that to happen.
There are things that are outside of your risk profile.
Exactly. It's a good way of putting it. But the other thing is I'm also careful and mindful about the fact that if someone's coming to me with an idea that's pretty advanced, probably they've shopped that around or thought about, maybe doing this, and they're also looking for someone to do it that they think is going to do this as safely as can be. I realize this is probably not very sexy for the folks listening, but that's a big deal. You need to understand, anatomy, physiology, how things actually work, that, you can do real damage that can be long lasting, even if you don't mean to. We've all probably done something at some point, if you do this long enough where you kind of go, yeah, that didn't go the way I thought it was gonna. I really thought we had that down. But
the Sharps people find anatomy and physiology and disinfection and sterilization very sexy, I promise.
but the point I make is that I'm always worried that someone will come to me and say, hey, I really want to do this thing. I want you to punch me in the face until I get a black eye. And if I don't take it seriously and at least make an effort to see if I can learn to do that thing, they may go to somebody that's not safe. And I know, I honestly have direct firsthand knowledge of people that really wanted some pretty advanced stuff, and they just wound up going with the wrong person. It didn't, in some cases, it didn't go very well. We're not talking emotional upset. We're talking about real physical damage that can happen. I think in most cases, all of us want things to be safe. I mean, it's honestly, that's kind of my whole thing, really. But so that's one of the reasons why I'm often willing to really find out what I can in terms of doing things that other people might be more reluctant to do.
I just wanted to say, yeah, definitely definitely be safe, but I think it's more about being safe while feeling unsafe, at least for the masochistic / the bottom part.
Yeah, sure.
On the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that brings it back to sexiness.
It does. Yeah, no, it very much does. I love that. So if our listeners wanted to go take a look at more of both of your work, or take a look at some of the other things that you've put out there, where could they do so?
For me, if you just want a sneak peek, you can certainly go to FetLife and take a look at my FetLife page. Everything I post on my website, I do sort of represented photographs of. There's also some, I think I probably like 30 or 40 videos up to. They're short, and often my videos on FetLife, for example, are kind of maybe slightly whimsical in some cases. Like I'll put something a little cuter or funnier up. And obviously, if they want to join, they can join at BrutalMaster.com. There's a join link right there. We have a wide variety of membership, something for every budget available. And 25 years, most of the 25 years of material is up. A few things for technical reasons are not, and there's a couple of years I think that are missing because we switched servers a while back and had to basically relink everything. It's a massive job, and I think a couple of years just have not yet made it up, although they will. Some of the older stuff too, which was relatively small in format, you can just download like a whole month, and so there's plenty of opportunity for people to see things. And Emily is
on LoyalFans and on OnlyFans under EmilyAddams official. I don't have that many videos up yet, to be honest, because I've recently started filming my stuff and not only doing it like privately behind closed curtains. So there's always new stuff that's getting added to my video stores. And I also do have a side project that's petgirl.life. It's a cute internet site about pet play that's not related to blood play at all. So forget about that straight away.
It's cute. Cute stuff is good too. Come on.
Custom videos too, right?
Oh yeah. I also do custom videos to an extent of I love to do special requests, especially if it goes like over a certain level of comfort. If we go into really hardcore bondage or even into blood play, the only thing I don't do is death fetish, because I'm a bit scared of the fact that a lot of people who like me would want to see me death. That would probably
that would be that. I mean, yeah.
that would be a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that would be probably the only thing that would be over my comfort level at the moment.
Understandable, for sure. That's wonderful. Well, we certainly encourage you all to go take a look and to support your fetish content creators. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your insights and your candidness and everything that you all have done to support and will do to support all of the kinksters out there. So thank you so much for joining, and we will catch you all for the rest of the Summer of Stabs series with all of our fantastic classes coming up. Keep in mind, we have self-stabs classes coming up. We also have Pin and Sin, our voodoo doll, human voodoo doll with Sharps class coming up. I am so fucking excited for that one. Can I just say it, like, that one is going to be so goddamn exciting. And like, our entire thing is going to be amazing. I know I'm doing another class on impact over needles this month. Before we end up going for Nightfall. And we have over 50 classes presently that have just been released for the on-demand side for Nightfall ahead of time. So keep on the lookout, and we will talk to you all soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.